Guess what, Lions? For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive bonus audio content and help this program grow by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. To learn more, head over to lionsofliberty.com/support.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another episode of Felony Friday right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. For those of you that might be new to Felony Friday, this is the show where each and every week we focus on exposing injustice in the broken criminal justice system. This is the 77th episode of Felony Friday, so that means you'll be able to find the show notes with links and notes to everything that we're going to talk about on today's show at lionsofliberty.com/FF77. Now, I got a really interesting interview coming up here with David Borden. If you're not familiar with David's work, David is a fascinating guy. He was one of the first people on the internet, really. One of the first people to be building websites on the internet. And on top of that, back in the 90s, when he was doing this, he was building a web presence to fight against the war on drugs back in the 1990s. I know, it's hard to believe back when most people, like myself, were just logging on to AOL and checking their mail, hearing you've got mail, and using AOL Instant Messenger and going to chat rooms and just being an idiot, waiting 5-10 minutes for your modem to start up, and then just going on there and just wasting your time. David was actually building a web presence, so we're going to talk to him about that, and I'm excited for you guys to hear about that. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about our sponsor for today's show, MartinArmory.com. Now, MartinArmory.com was founded with the simple goal of making buying a gun simple and affordable. Now, instead of carrying thousands of different types of guns, Martin Armory only carries 25 different models. Now, they do carry rifles, handguns, and shotguns, but you're not going to have a wide variety. The 25 best guns, so just the top pickings from each of those categories. Go to Martin Armory right now and check out the selection. I promise you will not be disappointed. The pricing is phenomenal. Now, when you go there, don't forget, you pick out your gun, you're going through checkout, you're going to be excited because you're going to be saving money. They have rebates on some of the guns. The prices you're getting are really, really good. Don't forget to put in promo code LIONS at checkout for two reasons. One reason, we want them to know that you came to them because of us. And a second reason, the most important reason, is it gets you free shipping. So go to MartinArmory.com, pick out a gun that you want, check out, put in promo code LIONS, and get free shipping. And, heck, you can even tell us about it. Come to the Lions of Liberty forum and hit us up. Let us know what kind of gun you bought. You can shoot us a message on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. Let us know what gun you picked out. We'd love to talk some firearms with you. So please go ahead and do that. All right, guys, let's get into today's show. My guest today on Felony Friday is David Borden. David is the founder and executive director of StopTheDrugWar.org. David has played a leading role in pioneering the use of the internet for education and for organizing drug policy reform. This all started after he founded DRCnet back in 1993. Now, David's education and his background, he earned a degree with honors in astrophysical sciences from Princeton University in 1988 and completed a Master of Music in Jazz Composition from New England Conservatory in 1990. It's a little background on StopTheDrugWar.org before we get started with the interview. StopTheDrugWar.org works to end drug prohibition worldwide, and they have a stated mission of ending the drug war in its current form. The organization believes that much of the harm commonly attributed to drugs is really the result of placing drugs in a criminal environment, and that the global war has fueled the violence, civil instability, and public health crises that we see today. So without further ado, David, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thanks for having me. Let me just say, since you read some of our history, that maybe not all of your listeners remember back in 1993, using the internet was innovative, especially for activism. So we were able to help get the movement online at that time. Today, of course, everyone uses the internet, and lots more people are writing about drug policy, but we still play a role.
Maybe that's a good place to start, because I'm 34 years old, sorry. And I know back in 1993, I was not using the internet. I probably started using it, I don't know, late 90s, sometime in there. And still, it was very limited. It was that very slow dial-up. We used AOL and, when the modem's going to dial up. So back in 1993, when you started, how much of a following did you have? How much traction did you gain through that?
Well, the numbers took a while to get to where they are now. It was a big deal when we got to four figures, but it quickly took on a lot of energy. People were ready to talk to each other about this issue, and there was a need for information about the issue. The mainstream media wasn't doing a lot to cover the angles that really seemed important. They weren't doing enough even with the angles that they were covering. Right around that time, and this was, I think, November 1993, the Surgeon General at the time, Joycelyn Elders, made a remark to the effect of drug legalization being something that's worth studying. It might reduce crime. Now, she was attacked for it from all over the map. The President Clinton, didn't really stand up for her, although he didn't fire her right then. So maybe he did stand up for her a little. But I felt, okay, this gets the discussion going. It's time to get active. But there were groups, not nearly as many as there are now, a small handful by comparison. People working on medical marijuana. There were people who mostly wanted to talk about legalization, groups devoted to sentencing reform, groups in the harm reduction side, programs like Needle Exchange, that sort of thing, organizations dealing with the international issues, the drug war in Latin America. So my concept was, well, let's collect all the information, put it in one place, and help everyone find out what everyone else is doing. Some people, some organizations will want to get involved in other issues or the bigger issues. Some won't be able to, but we'll be able to help each other. So it was a formative time, and not long after I had started that up, funding became available in the issue through a grants program, indirectly funded by George Soros. So it was the right idea at the right time story.
Okay. And I actually, it's interesting to bring that up, because I did just read a paper that you wrote. It might have been, was it for Brown University, where you were talking about that the Attorney General at the time during the Clinton administration, and there was one quote from Bill Clinton that just stuck out to me. I hadn't heard it before. In response to it, like you said, he didn't strike it down. He didn't fire her or anything, but he said that he had no interest in investigating or researching the topic of drug reform, which I thought, looking back at that today, that's just a really incredible thing to say.
Yeah, well, it was a different time, and that's the other interesting thing for those of us who've been doing this for all that time, and there are people who've been doing it for even longer, but I'm one of the most long-timers in the movement at this point. Things really have changed dramatically in some ways.
What do you think has led to that change? Has it largely been driven by the internet, by social media, by just there being more avenues, more vehicles for information to get out there? Do you think that has been the driver, or has it just been, are we becoming just more compassionate and aware as a society?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors. The internet and the greater presence of different points of view online, ability for people to talk to each other, that certainly played a role. The changing views on marijuana policy. Now, we're a big picture organization. We work on marijuana reform, but we work on, on other parts of the issue too. But public opinion, just mainly as a function of the progress of time and the fact that younger people more of them are supportive of legalization, have moved that issue to a point where things could get done. Money coming in to fund these ballot initiatives, medical marijuana, the first big one, California in 1997, Prop 215, and now we have legalization passing. It's become possible because of the shift in public support and because of the money there. There are other parts of this to look at. In sentencing, now it's still a very difficult situation politically trying to change sentencing, and we still have an obscene number of people incarcerated, many of them for drugs. And if you follow the chain of cause and effect, probably more get traced back in some way to bad drug policies, even if the charges that people are facing aren't drug specific. But politically, things have really shifted. There's a consensus, left and right, that sentences should be shorter. We should have less of an emphasis on that. There needs to be criminal justice reform. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, is one of the few people on the other side of that. But he's getting a lot of criticism, including from within his own party. He's going to do a lot of damage, but I doubt he'll be able to really turn things back. We've had, and this is in the last several years, leaders have begun to speak out. In Latin America, a number of former presidents, heads of state, formed a group. Latin American Commission on Drug Policy may have been the name. It was superseded by the Global Commission on Drug Policy. But some of the most prominent people speaking up and talking about the big picture of the issue, putting legalization on the table, not always coming out explicitly for it, though they have clearly done so now. And then we saw a number of current heads of state raise the legalization question. Juan Manuel Santos in Colombia. There were a few of them in Latin America who did that. And so that really helped to change the dialogue as well. And I guess another thing, and this is an unfortunate that it had to happen this way, but the AIDS epidemic opened things up for discussing this and for addressing policies, because the drug war does so much to fuel the spread of AIDS. One way it does that is prohibition leads to more sharing of syringes, which are the way that diseases like AIDS, HIV, like hepatitis C will spread. But then the more you police that, if you're busting people for residue or just for the syringes, people who are targeted, which is primarily the minorities, they'll possess their injecting equipment for as short a period of time as they can in order to reduce the probability of getting arrested for it, which leads to more sharing. So that's another way that the issue has been pressed forward. There's a common, I view this as a fallacy, or if not a fallacy, then an oversimplification. Sometimes people say, and even some of the more thoughtful people will say, well, by banning drugs, we're trading a public health problem, what we'd have if more people use drugs, for a criminal problem, the crime, the illicit drug trade, the underground that goes along, that happens when you prohibit drugs, but people keep using them. That actually misses something important, which is that the harm that comes from certain kinds of drugs, the more dangerous ones in particular, gets increased on average by making them illegal. The high price causes all kinds of calamities to happen to people, makes the supply of drugs more pure sometimes, which makes them more dangerous. Just having them illegal makes the supply unreliable, and people can get poisoned or overdose because they didn't realize how potent the batch they got was. I guess the analytic way to express this, and in one of my papers, I don't remember if I went into this in the Brown paper that you mentioned, though I think I did. The way this gets expressed analytically is that the average harm per unit drug use is greater under more controlled systems, is less under less controlled systems. On the other hand, you might have more people trying certain drugs under less controlled systems. It's not a simple thing to say either way, but when people say, drugs have to be illegal because they're harmful, well, not exactly. They're even more harmful on average,
right?
Because of being made illegal.
I think a good way. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I think it's important to point out, and I think you said it in that Brown paper as well, that legalization is actually regulation, and I think that's really a profound way to look at it. Because when something is prohibited and pushed into the back alleys of society, there's no regulation. There's, as you were just talking about, there's uncertainty with dosage. There's, it might be, certain types of drugs that heroin could be cut with that, somebody could have a reaction to that leads to a lot of the overdosing. A lot of the times with heroin addicts who overdose, it's not the actual heroin that causes the overdose, it's the things that it's mixed with. So I think a good way of putting it, which is the way you put it in that Brown paper, is that if you want to regulate drugs, if you want to regulate some of these even more powerful drugs like heroin and cocaine and things like that, then legalize them and let's bring them into actual society so we can start to put some regulations in place that make sense. Let the market actually regulate the drug trade as well. Don't let the black market sort of regulate it in a way that makes it more dangerous.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. And yes, there will be downsides to regulation. There are downsides to any system, but the problems that we're creating with the prohibition system are so serious that, in our view, it's just not justifiable. It's not justifiable to drive people to disease and overdose based on the theory that we're discouraging other people from using these drugs by doing so. That's how I feel about it.
We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from the sponsor of today's show. We'll be right back with more from David Borden.
I firmly believe one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones is to own a firearm. But for a lot of people, buying a gun can be an overwhelming process. There are just so many options, and not everyone feels comfortable walking into a gun store. Well, our friends at MartinArmory.com are doing their part to change that. Martin Armory was founded with a simple goal: to make buying a gun simple and affordable. Instead of carrying thousands of different guns, MartinArmory.com only carries 25. This allows them to focus on providing the most popular guns on the market at insanely cheap prices. And now, for a limited time, their prices are even more insane, as MartinArmory.com is offering Lions of Liberty listeners free shipping. Simply go to MartinArmory.com, pick an awesome gun, and enter the promo code LIONS. Again, that's MartinArmory.com. The promo code is LIONS.
David, you've seen so much change in the time since you've got started being an activist in drug policy reform and criminal justice reform. Starting DCR.net in 1993, we've talked about the obstacles there. I'm sure along the way it's become, it's been very frustrating seeing things not change, and then more recently, sort of gaining some momentum. It's probably been very satisfying. What first motivated you to get involved in drug policy reform, and what carried you through, some of those more frustrating times when it was difficult to advance this agenda forward?
Well, back again in the 90s, I just decided I wanted to save the world. I wasn't hit personally with something to do with the drug issue, at least so far as I knew. But the more I read, the more I kept encountering these different aspects of drug policy in ways that basically one disaster after another I kept directly caused by bad drug policies. I just kept encountering as I was learning more about how the world works. But I saw not many people were really talking about the issue at the level that I thought need to be talked about. It was stunning to me, the idea that we could really reduce types of crime that that are driving problems like poverty, for example, by switching to a regulation system. But who was talking about it? Some people, but not that many very prominently. So it just seemed like it was a useful issue to promote, that there was a need for people to work on it. Then when Dr. Elders spoke up, it seemed even more like the time to jump in. I had gotten a sense from some other activity of the potential of the internet for political organizing. So I decided to just move forward. Many people in the issue experienced something directly personal. Either they're a user and don't like having to hide it, feel persecuted, or they did go through an arrest, conviction, or whatever happened, or something worse than that. Lots of people in the issue have been personally affected. I just learned about it and decided it was important.
One of the things that I think is really unique about your organization is that it operates globally. It's working to initiate international drug policy reform. And one thing I came across on your website was you're working on organizing a campaign seeking to have the Philippines president, Rodrigo Duterte, I think I'm saying that right, very tyrannical leader of the Philippines, who's basically come out and said that he's willing to kill anybody involved in the drug trade or is using drugs of any kind without any sort of a trial whatsoever, just extrajudicial killings. So what type of things can your organization do here in the United States to affect change in the Philippines?
Well, one thing I've learned working on this is that people in the Philippines are extremely sensitive to what gets said about the country and their president and the things going on there in international fora. They say they don't care. They're going to do what they want. They've shown pretty clearly that they care about it a lot. It hasn't yet produced the change that's needed. So my organization, we're actually in an unusual position as a result of some work we did last March, and unexpectedly. We organized what's called a side event. There's an annual major UN drug meeting. These take place at the UN in Vienna, the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. And they have smaller meetings throughout the year, but their main annual session is every March. We received an accreditation with the UN Economic and Social Council, which the drug agencies are a part of, which enabled us, under our own name, for the first time to apply to hold an event during this session. So there were 80 or 90 side events, so there were quite a few. And I decided we'd have something on the extrajudicial killings. And so my We reached out through some friends' contacts, and unexpectedly, we wound up with the vice president of the Philippines, who's a critic of the killings, recording a video speech for us to play, because she wasn't able to go to Vienna herself due to other travel coming up. It was hugely exciting, a very powerful presentation she made, and we released it online a couple of days before the event. Time magazine ran it on their website, and it quickly got a great deal of interest in the Philippines. But a few days later, political opponents of the vice president began to use it to attack her politically. And not just the video, but other things which happened the same week. A member of the Congress filed an impeachment complaint against the president, mainly over the killings. And the European Parliament passed a resolution of concern about the situation. So the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the Philippines and Duterte's spokesperson claimed that the video release must have been timed to coincide with the impeachment complaint and maybe the European Parliament resolution, and that it must have all been orchestrated by the vice president as a destabilization campaign against the government. And this turned into a campaign to impeach her, which may or may not happen. So we inadvertently became part of this, at this point, you'd say negative political event in the Philippines over the vice president's criticism of the president's drug policies. But that also has had the effect of giving us some ability to access the media in the Philippines, since I'm the organizer of this event, the UN event that's famous there. We're trying to put good messages out, intelligent discussion of the issue of what's going on with the extrajudicial killings. We posted the full footage from our event as a presentation by the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines, people with expertise about the International Criminal Court. And we're looking, we do communications to the media there, trying to get more press on that angle here, although the issue of the Philippines and the drug war killings has gotten a lot of attention. There's been less on how the drug war is being used as a tool to go after, for the president and others to go after political opposition and to try to centralize more power with themselves. We're trying to get that more into the Western media, that angle. And we're looking at what kind of organizing can we do globally with political and legal players and others around the world to increase the pressure.
It's interesting that in a country like the Philippines, that I guess I'm saying it from the perspective of the United States, looking at our system of government. You wouldn't think, you wouldn't see Mike Pence criticizing Donald Trump on drug policy. Normally, even if they do disagree, to the public, they're in lockstep. So it is sort of refreshing to see, even though you see these extrajudicial killings, very horrifying, really. It's nice to see that politicians there in the Philippines, the vice president, are speaking out against it.
Yeah, no, it's a different system. Duterte and Vice President Robredo were not a ticket. And so they were elected separately, but it's been brave of her to do that, as the attacks on her demonstrate. But it is a tough environment there right now, and so there are some people speaking out. Sometimes they get silenced through one means or another. But people are hoping that Duterte his popularity as a new president ultimately will decline as part of the natural course of things, and that will open up more possibilities for doing something about this.
Yeah, hopefully it does, because that is just it's a horrible situation. One thing I do want to talk about before I let you go here is your Drug War Chronicle newsletter. I don't know how, but I just found out about it a few weeks ago, and it is an incredible resource, incredibly relevant stories for someone like myself who is always looking to learn more about criminal justice reform, drug reform, and looking for a resource where I can point people towards to learn more about it. So I just wanted to ask you, where did you come up with the idea for this? What's really the origin story with this Drug War Chronicle newsletter?
Well, our focus from the beginning was collecting and disseminating information. The Chronicle itself, we decided, and a former staff member, Adam J. Smith, he's a regular on the Marijuana Today podcast, if you've heard of that. He launched the newsletter. We were talking, and there should be a weekly news report on this. And at the time, you could report on all of it. You could write articles about all of it. We switched a few years ago to daily roundups and other articles as we're able, but that was just the only format where it was possible for us to even try and cover everything. So the Chronicle is in its 20th year. It's so some don't remember the exact anniversary, but it was started back then by my coworker, who's involved in some cannabis industry related work in Oregon right now. But we've kept it going. Phil Smith, our current writer, has been doing the newsletter since May 2000.
And it is an outstanding resource. I do want to encourage, and I'll link to on the show notes page, I'll definitely link to the Drug War Chronicle. I will link to the website as well. But before I let you go, I do want to ask you to please share with my audience how they can help, how they can contribute in some way to stopthedrugwar.org, and if you want to plug or talk about any other projects that you're currently working on.
Sure. Well, I'd say first, subscribe to our email list. You'll get the newsletter, occasional other bulletins, and you read the stories, follow the links. You'll find not just our work, but the work of all kinds of organizations involved in this, and you'll probably find things you can do in your state, certainly things you can do online. So I think that's the easiest way to start. Filling out those online forums, write to Congress, whatever. I know people get tired of them. Everyone does them. That's the first smallest thing you can do, but it helps, and it tells the organizers that you're interested and some idea of what issues you're interested in. Good chance you'll get a letter back at some point from a member of Congress or a state legislator, and that could be what inspires you to get more involved.
What can we do is there anything from an activist standpoint that we can do about Attorney General Jeff Sessions? Are there petitions out there that should be signed, or is it just sort of just to sit back and just wait till he gets out of that role?
Well, I think everyone needs to speak up about two things in particular. One, how totally wrong he is to push sentencing in a harsher direction again, to take away the flexibility that prosecutors had to charge lower or to reduce that. And secondly, that they really need to leave the marijuana legalization system alone, work with states to regulate it and not crack down, which they haven't said they're going to crack down, but they haven't said they're not, and there have been some ominous moves. So I think letters to the editor, call your representatives and senators, even the good ones who have the right idea, and the wrong ones who have the wrong ideas. Really make sure they know that we do not want marijuana legalization or sentencing reform to be set back. We want more of both, and they should be passing language to protect states that do legalization or do medical, to allow banking for the industry, and to reform sentencing. Both of these are bipartisan issues at this point, to one degree or another. So making noise about that, I think, is the most important thing.
100% agree with you. And I would just add also sharing this podcast, sharing this with your networks and getting the word out. Also visiting stopthedrugwar.org, and especially checking out the Drug War Chronicle newsletter, sharing articles and resources you find there. David, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show and sharing your story, and want to thank you for way back in 1993 being a pioneer in taking this activism online.
Well, it was a pleasure joining you today.
All right, thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed this interview with David Borden, a really interesting guy, a fascinating guy. As I said, pretty incredible that back in the 90s, he was trailblazing a way through taking the fight against the war on drugs to the interwebs, and he's still at it today. So an incredible story. Thank you guys for listening. I want to remind you to go to lionsofliberty.com to support the show, to help us to grow this show, to bring on more great guests like David Borden. And for just $5 per month, that's our lowest tier for joining the Lions Pride, you'll get access to all of the exclusive audio content that we produce. This is all the content outside of our normal Monday, Wednesday, and Friday public feed, which of course has on Monday you have Mark Claire with the OG Lions of Liberty podcast, where he just had episode 300 this past Monday with Larry Sharp and Jason Stapleton. You got to check that out if you haven't heard it. It was an awesome episode. And on Wednesday, Brian McWilliams, who has just been killing it with Electric Liberty Land. You better be listening to that show every single Wednesday. And Friday, of course, this show. Like I said, outside of that, we do produce additional content, and that is for our Lions Pride members. We have Conspiracy Theory Roundtables. We have extra Felony Friday episodes, like we just had one that we recorded this past week, which was released today to our Lions Pride. And I'm going to give you guys a taste of that episode right now. Here is myself and Brian McWilliams talking about the horrible case out of Massachusetts of the 17-year-old girl who convinced her boyfriend to kill himself. Yeah, well, yeah, the end text. I mean, that's really all you need to read at the end of this. So.
The literal nail in the coffin.
Yeah, the situation at the end is the boyfriend finally, after they go back and forth, and this Michelle Carter is saying, "You won't do it. You won't kill yourself. You won't kill yourself. You won't do it. You never follow through with anything. You won't do it." Back and forth. Finally, he's in a parking lot somewhere. And he actually he's in the car. He's filling it up with CO2, and he gets out of the car and then texts Michelle Carter, and she convinces him to get back into the car to finish the job, finish killing himself, and he kills himself. And then she texts, like, I don't have it right in front of me. I don't know if you do, Brian. It's something like, "Well, did you delete the text before you did?"
Yeah. You want to make sure she covers her tracks.
What a bitch.
Yeah. And, I mean, that shows, and like you said, it's this ongoing, she's goading him into it. She's telling him, she's like haranguing him. She's like a nagging wife, but instead of taking out the trash, it's like, have you killed yourself yet? Are you going to kill yourself? When are you going to kill yourself? And it's like just nagging him, this horrible person, nagging him over and over again. And then, the fact that the kid clearly had second thoughts, he clearly didn't want to go through with it. He, and that's where if you love somebody, or even if it was just if I'm walking down the street and I see a guy get out of a car filled with CO2 and he goes, "Hey man, should I get back in this car?" I'd be like, "No, don't get back in the car. Come here. I'll buy you some milk and a cookie. Like, let's go somewhere away from this car where you're going to murder yourself." Like anybody that's not a sociopath would do that.
Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that little taste there. Hope it's motivated you to go over to lionsofliberty.com/support and to join the Lions Pride. Help us to fund this show, grow this show, advertise on other shows so we can reach a wider audience. Please consider doing that. We do have additional levels above $5. We have a $10 and a $25 level for our more elite Pride members. At those levels, you're going to get access to more goodies, free t-shirts. You're going to get, actually, at the $25 level, you get a conference call with us every month. So you get direct access to us, and you have a vehicle to influence the show and help us to plan our shows and help to plan what we talk about. One last thing that I want to note, guys, DonorSee, of course, DonorSee, founded by previous guest who Mark Claire interviewed on his show, Greg Glyer, the founder of DonorSee. DonorSee is an incredible website that allows you to donate anything from $1 to whatever, $10, $20, $100, and you can pick the project that you want that money to go to. And we've been working with some other libertarian podcasts. We've been working with a group, Walk the Walk, which is founded by a member of our Lions Pride, Clint Rankin. And you can follow that group. You can join that group. There's a Facebook page and a Facebook group, Walk the Walk. We've come together and we've decided to pick a different cause and work together to get it funded. And previously, if you've been paying attention, the previous cause was for Esther, and it was to get her enough money to get her HIV medication and training to run a chicken farm so she could then work on that chicken farm and then serve as a mother to several orphans in the village. Esther was funded last week, so now we are moving on to another cause. This cause is really important, super important, and can have a really big impact on a lot of families. It's out of Malawi, and there's an area there where there's 300 families live there, and they have to walk 45 minutes each way to get water from a dirty swamp. Every year, people die from that village, from diseases they pick up, drinking this terrible, filthy water. And what this project is going to do is it's going to fund the installation of a high-quality well right smack in the middle of this village. So there's $2,512 left to fund this project as of my recording this right now. So please go check that out at DonorSee. You can actually go directly to the page if you can find it in the app. It's actually a project sponsored by Greg Glyer. Or if you want to find it on the, just go to the website. It would be DonorSee.com/project/823. So check that out. Guys, that's all I have for you for today's show. I really, really appreciate you listening. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.